The remains of former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe will lie in state tomorrow and Friday. The public will be able to pay their respects at the Rufaro Stadium in Harare. His body arrived in the Zimbabwean capital this afternoon from Singapore, where he died last week, aged 95. Zimbabwe's founding father ruled for almost 4 decades, from independence in 1980 until he was removed in 2017. We now cross live to our correspondent, Ephert Musekiwa. Very good evening to you, Ephert. Describe the scene as former President Robert Mugabe's body arrived in Harare today.
Well, there were thousands of people that gathered this evening to receive the body of the former President Robert Mugabe. People were singing, they were dancing, they were wearing his regalia. You know, they were chanting his slogan, Gushungo, Gushungo, Gushungo. And when the body finally did arrive, we saw, the chanting got louder and louder. Then as the convoy drove from the airport, people started gathering on the streets. People, the streets were literally impassable. You couldn't even move because there were a lot of people just gathered on the streets of Harare trying to get a glimpse of the body of the vehicle that was carrying the body of the former president.
Ephert, we know we've been speaking to you throughout the day for updates, and early on you were saying that people didn't really seem moved, and that mood has seemed to change now.
Yes, indeed, it has changed. When the body did arrive in Harare, there were thousands of people that were gathered. There were thousands of people that were chanting Gushungo, Gushungo as the convoy with the body was passing through. These were scenes that we had never seen before. These were scenes that we didn't anticipate, considering that when the news of the death was announced, there wasn't much reaction from the public. But what we saw today, how the public responded to the arrival of the body, was something that we were not anticipating, and really thousands and thousands of people have now, gathered. We do understand that from here they've now gone to the Blue Roof. President Mnangagwa did give a short speech at the airport that people will be gathered tonight at his residence, which is the Blue Roof. Then further funeral arrangements will be announced from there.
What happens next?
Well, what happens next is that, like I did indicate, tomorrow is set aside for the public to be able to get a chance of viewing the body at one of the stadiums called Rufaro Stadium. That is for tomorrow and the day after, and also on Friday. Then we still anticipate that the burial is still going to happen on Sunday, because they said nothing much has changed, except that right now, further announcements or further developments will only be announced this evening by the Minister of Home Affairs at the residence of the former president at the Blue Roof.
So there have been media reports that there's a contestation over where former President Robert Mugabe should be buried, whether or not it's Heroes Acre or in his home village.
Well, indeed, those reports have really been doing the rounds. And yesterday, President Mnangagwa did meet with the chiefs from the village where President Robert Mugabe comes from, that is Rimba. He had a meeting yesterday, and he said the final position will only be known once the chiefs, once the government, and once the family, that is the widow and the children, have set and agreed as to where they would want President Robert Mugabe to be finally laid to rest. But even at the airport, the President Mnangagwa did not indicate where the burial is going to take place.
Can you give our viewers some insight into what Heroes Acre is and the type of people that are buried there?
Well, the Heroes Acre is a monument that is in the capital city, Harare. This is where most former liberation fighters, or those that took part in the liberation war of Zimbabwe to liberate Zimbabwe from white colonial rule, are buried. The prominent figures, the prominent faces are all buried there. These include the late former Army General or Army Commander Mujuru. That also include the former Vice President Joshua Nkomo and all the other vice presidents who have passed on while still in office. That Mzenda and Msika and Nkomo are also all buried at the Heroes Acre. So all those figures, and people anticipate that because Mugabe was the commander-in-chief he was the commander of the army, he definitely should be buried at the National Heroes Acre. And this is where this is all emanating from, that, all the Liberation War fighters are buried there as a commemoration or as an honor for the contribution that they played, or for the role that they played in liberating the country. So people expect President Mugabe to be buried there. But previously in the past, we've had some people who have been declared heroes or national heroes, but their families have said we want to bury them next to their relatives. So then they've given the families, the go-ahead, or they've given the families the prerogative to choose where they'll bury their loved ones.
Ephert Musekiwa, our correspondent in Harare, giving us up-to-the-minute reports and insight into what's happening there. Now, several African heads of state have indicated that they will attend former President of Zimbabwe Robert Mugabe's funeral this weekend. President Cyril Ramaphosa will lead a South African delegation, along with former Presidents Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma. Other world leaders who will be paying their last respects include Chinese President Xi Jinping, former Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff, and former Cuban President Raul Castro. An official funeral service will be held at Harare's National Sports Stadium on Saturday, followed by his burial on Sunday.